Welcome to the Creating Connections podcast, where I bring voices and perspectives from different people who are making a difference for children's learning and development. I'm Rachel Stewart, and I'm passionate about connecting with people to share experiences and learn from each other how we can best support children to thrive. As founder and director of Practically Learning, I specialise in developing the capacity of parents and educators through personal development coaching and professional learning programs. I'm endlessly curious about what is happening in our world today, especially in our schools, and how we can share good news stories and strategies for what is working and how to improve the lives of children in our world today and for the future. In this series of the podcast, we are exploring successful leaders in education, so you can learn from a diverse range of people what makes a successful leader and how you can take their learnings and apply them to your leadership. Today, I'm introducing you to an accomplished school leader who currently works as CEO and principal of Yarra Valley Grammar in Victoria, Australia, a co-education school from foundation to year 12. He has previously been chair of Association of Heads of Independent Schools of Australia and in Victoria, and began his teaching career at Whitefriars Catholic Boys' School, then moved into leadership positions in Tasmania, and then went on to become the Dean of Students at Parade College and Principal of Marsland College in Melbourne from 2001 to 2009. Mark has written several education research papers, and his interests include educational psychology, leadership and management, military and naval history, and politics. His doctoral thesis on school improvement in 2009 was researching the building of a boy-friendly school. Mark has recently returned from the US, where he visited Harvard School of Education to meet with leaders from all around the world to discuss education. Dr. Mark Merry and I will share in conversation about leadership in education, where you'll learn more about his background and how he became a leader, what his visions are for the future of education, and some of the initiatives he's been involved with to contribute to the improvement of learning and culture across independent schools. So I'd like you to welcome Dr. Mark Merry. Just to begin the session, you can share with me what your typical morning looks like.
Do we begin?
We can begin, I guess, as a high achiever, and I guess I put myself in that category as well. There's usually a routine or something that you do in the morning to get you up and going and fired up for the day. I know I go for a walk usually, or do some meditation, or just write some thoughts down before I start the day. So how would you normally start your day?
My day begins... I get up at 7 o'clock, regardless of whether I'm at work or I'm on holidays. Every morning, 7 o'clock. I'm a bit of a creature of habit. But the very first thing I do is read the tabloid press. Now, you might think that's bizarre, but I just want to read it to make sure we're not in it. And I always breathe a sigh of relief when we're not in it. And so, job accomplished. We've got through another day without being dragged through the tabloid press. I then get myself organised, get ready. I'm a little bit. I must have one of those personality types, because I have all my suits and my ties and my shirts all done on Sunday, so everything's lined up for the week. So I can literally grab something off the rack and go and get sorted and get ready, so I don't have to think in the morning. So, speaking of not thinking in the morning, I read the tabloid press, and then I'll come into work. Now, I like order, and so that's probably a part of my personality, which is a little... I love order, but I know that the principal's job is supremely disordered, and so I can come into work and assume that I know what I'm doing for the morning, but find that all of a sudden things start to emerge which you didn't prepare for. And the secret is that an orderly person has to cope with that. You can't just ignore things that come your way spontaneously. So I tend to try and just deal with things as they go, and then deal with the order. For example, before this very meeting, a couple of things popped up, and I managed to cram them in and get them cleared away before we actually met. So, a combination of structure and anarchy is how I'd catch my day.
And that's a very unique skill, isn't it, to develop, especially if you are a very ordered person. But I guess it's about understanding what you can control and what you can't control. Would you say that you've worked on around your own personal development in terms of managing those uncertainties that pop up during your day?
Certainly do. I mean, one of the attributes which I think is critically important for a leader is the ability to remain calm in potential crises. It's like the duck with the little legs. You know, whatever's happening underwater, you can be as frantic as you like, but above it's serenity. And, you know, I've been in this very office when I've had a phone call from the police about an accident that's occurred involving one of our students, and all of a sudden your day disappears. So everything you'd all thought you were going to do for the day goes by the wayside, and you need to immediately go into some sort of solving mode or reaction mode to what's going on. In a similar light, a day, this is going back about 8 years, a day before school started, in the beginning of the year, a third of our senior school burnt down. And I was here when it was burning down, you know, and I thought, wow, this is going to make for an interesting day tomorrow. But our leadership team met around my lounge room table, and we were tucking into whatever we could prepare at 3 a.m. and having some snacks, and we were workshopping what we're going to do. And school was interrupted by one day, and so we're able to reorganize the school and get back up and running on the second day, with a third of the senior school basically taken out of action. So yes, I love order, and yes, it'd be wonderful if your world could be totally controllable, but it's not going to be that way. And so the secret, I think, is to remain calm, and if you're calm, everyone else takes a cue from the boss.
Yeah. So you have to steer the ship.
If the leader's running around, you know, like the sky is falling, everyone else will be doing the same thing. So maintaining calm and serenity is critical, I think.
And how do you manage that stress in terms of, well, clearly there's quite a few aspects of your role that you've never come across before, and all of a sudden you're thrown into that chaos. Do you see that as part of your growth development anyway, those types of things that appear?
Look, I do. I'm a firm believer that there's stress and there's pressure, and they're two very different things. Stress is an internal reaction to pressure. Now, I think I have a very pressured job, in that there's lots of things happening, and you know, you're in the kitchen, lots of pots boiling, and you've got to make sure everything's sort of working concurrently. But that's pressure. I like to think I'm in a pressured job, but I try not to be stressed, and that's the internalization of things. I've got better at that over the years. When I was first a leader, you know, a young deputy in schools and a young principal, I used to internalize a lot of things and stew. You know, you get into the churn. You know, how could they think that? How could that happen? Yeah. And I've got a lot wiser over the years, in that I don't internalize as much as I used to. And I recognized that pressure, the external factors that you know keep you at operating a higher level, need not be converted into stress. And that's taken me years to come to that realization, and years to actually train myself to not take on board all of that, because it doesn't do me any favors, and certainly you don't make better decisions. And so yeah, keeping it where it needs to be is a critical skill, I think.
Yeah, and it does take time to learn. Have you had any assistance along the way? Perhaps you could take us back to when you first started as a teacher, and I guess along the way you would have had role models that perhaps demonstrated those skills to you in how to manage that pressure cooker environment. Can you think of some role models or people that you looked up to as a young teacher moving up the ranks and how they impacted your leadership style now?
Yeah, I was very, very lucky in that people around me were very competent and had all the qualities that you'd really want. So as a young teacher, I had some coordinators who were just very good at their jobs and great interpersonal people. And you watch them, you watch how they handle themselves and do things. When I became a deputy principal, I went to, and I was only 29. This was a big secondary school, a very well regarded secondary school, private school in Tasmania. I went in, and to be honest, fake it till you make it. I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I was a callow youth, and I was probably about the second youngest on staff. So I had a few strikes against me. One, I was too young. Two, it was a co-ed school, and the headmaster was a male, so I was too male because really the balance wasn't there. And three, I was too Victorian. And so I had to break down a number of, adverse expectations. Oh, here we go. This is Victoria coming over telling us what to do. But I had a wonderful leadership model in the principal at the time. He was a gun, and we're still good friends now, but he taught me the craft of leading schools and taught me what was important and the things to concentrate on to help create a culture which is going to work for kids and to work for colleagues and so forth. So I was very, very lucky with the role models I had. And so coming up through the ranks, I watched and learned. And when I flew solo, so my first principalship, I had a really good team around me, which is lucky, but the buck does stop with the principal. You learn on the job. I made a few clangers. I made a few mistakes. The secret is to admit it. I'm a firm believer if you make a clang or make a mistake and admit it, and people, rather than diminish your authority, and I mean authority in the best sense, your personal authority, rather than diminish it, you enhance it. People think, wow, big enough to admit they're wrong, big enough to apologise, and therefore it actually works in your advantage to have that mindset rather than just to press on and think you're right all the time. And certainly I wasn't right all the time coming up through the ranks. So I made some, with the benefit of hindsight, made some interesting and perhaps not as good decisions as I could have. But you learn on the job. And here I am now.
Can you share any of those sort of errors where you think, probably could have done that differently, and you learned a huge lesson from it?
Absolutely. I firmly believe the job of a principal is we're custodians. We're merely custodians in the role. I mean, when I'm gone, hopefully remembered fondly, but when I'm gone, and it's up to the next person in the role to take the mantle and move forward. But when you're here, you hope that you will change things for the better. That's really what you're here for. Now, we're primarily focusing on young people because you never, ever, ever make a bad decision if your thinking goes something like this. What's in the best interest of the kids? You'll never make a bad call, ever, because that's where your focus should lie. So my first job as principal, I was red hot to go. I thought, yep, I'm going to make things better. But I think the approach I took was too top down. The agenda was mine. The agenda was the leadership team, and we were imposing change because we were in a hurry. We were impatient. We could see what we thought was needed, and we were going to implement things. With hindsight, that actually isn't the shortcut that you think it is. With hindsight, if you don't get buy-in from people, you're always going to be fighting a fight you don't need to fight. So this time around, I think a bit more nuance, a bit more engagement with people, a bit more getting my colleagues on board, allowing them to see what we see and allowing them to actually be part of the change that you need. And so I hope I've been more successful the second time around, a bit older, a bit wiser. And rather than rush in and play Mr. Fix-It, you go in a bit more slowly and you engage people and you hear opinion and you try and empower's a bit overused, but you know what I mean. You try and get people to come with you rather than sort of herd them along. So that's something I've learned, and I think I've been more successful the second time around.
Yeah, it's getting people to overcome their resistance to change.
Well, that's right. And look, I understand resistance to change. When you think about it, it's obvious why you get resistance. If you have someone who has worked a significant period of time becoming expert at a certain paradigm, and then someone comes along and says, no, that paradigm, I want to change the paradigm, I want you to be a novice again, then that's a big ask, because all of a sudden, all of this expertise is devalued in a way, and you become a starter again. Now, you're going to resist that. All of us would resist that. And so to bring in change, you have to be a lot more nuanced and have people understand that this is something that will be beneficial for their students and for them, rather than something imposed from on high. And that intuitively, I sort of knew that, but you always default to get it fixed. And I think, I'm a lot wiser now than I used to be.
And of course, you explored that in your paper, Principal Leadership in a Time of Change, where you shared some of the leadership styles, such as authoritarian, instructional, democratic, integrated, and transformative. Quite a few different styles of leadership. How would you describe your style of leadership in that sense, in the research that you did and the paper that you wrote, and the change that you led through the pandemic over the last few years, and how you approached that as a leader?
If I was brutally honest, I have a tendency toward benevolent dictatorship. I do. I admit it. I freely admit it. That is almost my natural default position. But because I know it doesn't work as well as it should, I wrench myself away from that default position and try and be more of a collaborative leader. That paper you referenced was fascinating in that we surveyed students and teachers in 9 schools, and they all said the same thing. When we asked them, what are you looking for in your principal? They all gravitated toward, we want the principal to model and represent the kinds of things that our schools are on about. In other words, they need to reflect the morals and the sense of what the culture of the school is in their dealings with others, and they need to engage people in the whole mission of the school. In other words, the principal needs to reflect the kinds of things they expect of their school community. And if you don't, you're in trouble. I'll give you an example. If I walk out this office today and I'm walking down the corridor and there's a young person doing the wrong thing, and I absolutely barrel them in front of all their friends, they walk away. I might feel better. I go, well, fix that one. But that young person, and every single person who witnessed that, would say, now, he bangs on about respect all the time, and he was just disrespectful. That's illegitimate. We don't believe him anymore. Now, if you do that often enough, you will be an illegitimate leader. If you instead treat everyone you meet with respect, and sometimes in a busy day, it's hard to do, you're in a hurry. But I try and engage with as many people as I can. And the example I use is in the morning, I park the car and one of our groundsmen's on the leaf blower. I get out and I have a yarn to him. And for that period of time, whether that be 30 seconds or 2 minutes or whatever it is, that person has my complete attention, and he knows it. And that 30 seconds is worth a lot more than 30 seconds, because he'll go back to his work colleagues and say, yeah, I spoke to the boss. Could have been about the footy, or could have been whatever it was about. Oh, the grounds look great. Whatever it was about. And that 30 seconds is not time ill spent. And I talked about having to admit when you're wrong. In another school, I was principal in another school. I was in a particularly grumpy mood one morning, and I was walking up the hill, and there's a group of boys there, and there was some litter on the ground. I saw one guy toss a bit of paper on the ground. Well, that was enough for me. And I barreled him out in front of his mates. And one thing you never do, and I know you never do, you never barrel out, particularly a boy, in front of his friends, ever, right?
It's the ultimate shame, isn't it?
And I walked off, and I fixed him. And then about 10 steps up the hill, I thought, no, and I turned around and walked back, and I called him over, and I said, I owe you an apology. And I said, look, you did drop the paper, you did the wrong thing, but I should never have barreled you out in front of your mates. I won't do it again. I'm sorry for that. And his mates were all listening. And he said, that's all right, sir. I'll get the paper the next time. Now, that young man, he was a character. But every time he saw me after that, he'd say hello and we'd have a bit of a chat. My authority was improved because I said to him, look, I did the wrong thing. I talk about respect and treating people with dignity and all that, and I didn't. And it was enough that I said sorry to him, that it enhanced my authority rather than diminished it. Now, you don't want to make mistakes all the time, but when you do, you've got to be big enough to say, yeah, lost the plot.
And you have to have a sense of self-awareness to be able to recognise that what you did wasn't actually what you want to reflect to those boys.
No, and I wouldn't want to be treated like that. Yeah. And it's a great part of our tradition. Treat people how you want to be treated yourself. It's a part of our tradition as a school. And I don't want to be treated like that. So why would I treat that person like that? I don't care if it's a student or a colleague or someone working in the art or whatever. The dignity of each individual is important. If that is part of our culture as a school, then the leader needs to model that all the time. And so you train yourself. The minute I walk from here, my office, to the other end of the school, I make sure that I'll say hello to as many people as I can, stop off and show some interest in what's going on. It's not wasted time.
And be seen.
That's the core business of the principal. That's the core business. It's not the emails and the paperwork and all that. The core business is to represent the what's important in the school community. And you're right, be seen, be a presence, be around, engage with people. That's the critical job of the principal. That's what you'll be remembered for. You won't be remembered for how good you were with emails. You're going to be remembered for how good you were with people, because we're in a very relational community. All teachers are, and all students are, and all principals. And if you recognize that the relationships are the most important thing, and the principal's most important job is to model good relationships, then that's where your energy should go.
And that's such a critical factor now, I guess, thinking about how education is changing and how we had to change during the pandemic to online learning. And yes, it worked for some and not for others. But ultimately, I heard in another interview you talked about how, we could go to online learning full time, but ultimately it is about relationships, and school is about people and learning to get along, learning to be together, learning to relate, learning to collaborate, and be, I guess, like lighthouses towards each other, because we are a mirror of each other, and how we treat each other is how we are going to respond to each other as well. So how do you nurture that amongst your staff as part of your culture, and also your students? How do you actually nurture those relational skills amongst your school community?
As parishes and clubs and neighbourhoods have started to diminish in terms of their impact on young people, the new communities are schools. If you think about it that way, and parents are part of our community and colleagues are part of our community, but the most important part of a student's life, apart from their family, tends to be their school life. Now, once you understand that, it's a lofty and a weighty responsibility to get it right. We really value here that our students really love their school. They love the place, and they know their teachers go beyond to look after them. They know that we value relationships. They know we're serious when relationships go wrong, that we will do something about it. We'll intervene to repair them. They know that we are intolerant of antisocial behaviour. They know that. There are clear expectations. And so I suppose the harder edge of the importance of relationships is if someone is undermining relationships and won't change, then there is a hard edge to our community as well. And I think consequences, if you are behaving in a way which is not conducive to a life-giving and positive community. A lot of our language is reinforced constantly around respect and around relationships and around random acts of kindness and around teamwork and about acceptance of people, and not tolerance. I think tolerance is overcooked. Tolerance suggests, oh, well, I'll put up with someone. No, we're not talking about tolerance. We're talking about acceptance. Accepting people from where they come from different directions, and being part of who we are. And that is reinforced if the principal and the leadership team and the senior teachers and the teachers and the school leaders, the student leaders and the captains and the team leaders are reflecting that kind of culture. It's going to get into the bones of the place. I find it a classic. It's almost a cliche now. When we do student leadership seminars with our students, what model of leadership do we have here at Yarra? All the hands go up. Servant leadership. I say, all right, I know you know it, servant, but what actually does that mean? And they were able to articulate, well, we're not here for the badge. We're not here for the title. We're not here to pump ourselves up. We're here to actually serve our school community and be part of creating a really good space for young people. Hey, that's how you build culture. It's reinforced by everyone. It's not just being imposed from me. It's being something that we really do nurture deep down in the bones of the place. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes something goes wrong. But I like to think in schools that a good school is not where things don't go wrong. Things will go wrong. Adolescents are in a trial and error stage of their lives. If you think that young people won't make mistakes, you're kidding. They will make mistakes. They will do the wrong thing. They will get it wrong. There will be errors made along the way. And that's part of being a young person. I dropped some clangers when I was a young guy. When I think back, I cringe. But it's not, a good school is not about nothing going wrong. A good school is what you do about it when it does. That's what makes for a good school. And so, yeah, things go wrong here from time to time. And when they do, it's how we react as adults that really is important. And most of the time, how we react is about educating. It's not about punishment. The only time I'm impatient with a young person is if they harm others and they refuse to change. Patience goes out the window then. But if they make mistakes, your classic your classic lovable villain, if they make mistakes, you try and educate why it's a mistake. And we got great kids here, but they still do the wrong thing every now and again.
Well, they're always going to test the boundaries, aren't they? And in terms of your role, you always should be prepared for that anyway, and your staff should be prepared. But how well do you think teachers are prepared for those times where they have to respond? And are they aware of the different ways to respond, or the different ways that their brain responds to things, and how they can be more self-aware in terms of how they actually react to different things that arise?
I used to do some teaching at the University of Tasmania. So I was teaching the master's course, classroom management and educational psych. And one of the things I tried to impress upon my students was the only person in the room whose behavior you can actually insist on is your own.
Yep.
You can't make a kid do anything. When you think about it, you literally can't make a kid do anything. And I said, that's a bit of a strange way of looking at it. I said, all right, what if you say to a kid, you need to move out of that chair, move down, and they go, no, I'm not moving. What's your next step? What comes next? Oh, well, I get angry and I tell, yeah, and they look at you and you've yelled at them and they yell back at you. What happens then? What's step number 3 after that? And there's no step number 3. And so one thing I was teaching is if you govern your own behavior, the students will respond differently. And so, trying to control your own temper when you're under pressure, not becoming stressed, making valid and logical responses to certain behaviors. So it's really training yourself to be in control of yourself when you go into that classroom. Now, there's not a lot of that done. Teacher training is largely about curriculum at universities. It's largely about curriculum and less so about what I think is most important, and that is the ability to develop good relationships. A teacher who can develop good relationships can teach a student anything. A teacher who is really, really, really brainy in their subject but isn't good with relationships will teach a student nothing. That's the difference. And so what we try and do is when we recruit teachers, we look they have to be proficient in their subject, because we do have high aspirations academically, but we have a panel, and one person on the panel is teasing out their knowledge, subject knowledge. There's one person on the panel though who's looking at them very carefully and thinking, would I want my kid in this person's class? That literally is the ultimate litmus test. And so we're trying to work out whether this person, what their view of young people is, whether they see them as the enemy, or whether they see them as someone to be controlled, or whether they see that, I would much prefer someone who sees the value of relationships, who develops those positive sort of relationships with the students, and the students will do anything for them. That's the kind of teacher we're chasing. And so we recruit that way. And a lot of our professional learning, once the teachers are here, is concentrated on those sort of skills, being able to draw out young people and to have them trust you. If a young person trusts their teacher, and trust is so difficult to gain and so easy to lose, But if you have the trust of your students in your class, they'll do anything for you. And so that's where the energy needs to be, developing good relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm extremely passionate about that in my work, and looking at ways to support educators in how to develop their own awareness of their perceptions of other people, including students and colleagues and parents, and how to overcome those to be more self-aware and able to actually build that trust. But yeah, it is certainly, it surprises me that that's not part of initial teacher education. Do you have any, I guess, suggestions of what you think needs to change when it comes to developing teachers to be ready for the profession? It's a big question, I know.
It's a huge question. Look,
I'll give you some time to think about that one.
I think the idea of some form of, and I know that some universities are doing this, some form of internship or cadetship in schools to actually be in a school.
Yeah.
I think there's a good argument for schools to become training schools for teachers, because if you get the best teachers who are trainers, the kids don't suffer having that, because you've got the best teachers, trainers in the school. But being able to train people on the job. So yes, certainly be part of their academic studies at university, but the craft of teaching, I use that word deliberately, the craft of teaching could well be learned within a school context, I think.
Yeah.
So a bit of that.
I've witnessed that actually in a school where my children went. There was some students who came in to have their lessons once a week in the school, and they were able to learn from the other teachers, be mentored, and I was lucky enough as a parent to be able to run a session on parent engagement as well. And a lot of the feedback we got from those students was that they valued that experience so much so that they it shifted their views of working in a low SES school for a start. They wouldn't have thought about working in that environment. And also just the value of learning from different people within the school and being able to mix with the students, get to know them, and really just get a feel for what it's like to be in a school community.
Here's the danger. You must have a school where the culture is overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah.
Because new and emerging teachers will learn their craft off their colleagues. Now, if you have a school where the teachers are disenfranchised and low energy and passive resisting and a bit whingy and complaining about this and that and what are they doing to us now and all that kind of stuff, that gets transmitted to the up and coming teachers, and they learn those behaviors, and all you're doing is reinforcing poor behaviors. The best training is when you are able to go into a school culture which is very strong, where there's buy-in from the teachers, where there's genuine pride in their work, where there's genuine time and effort spent on the craft of teaching. There are good relationships with the young people, and things are upbeat. And those young teachers go, wow, this is why I chose this job. I love it. But you've got to have that kind of culture. Yeah. Now, it's hard. I can't tell you, I can't give you a figure, but there are both types of schools out there. There's the school where the staff are down and low and aren't going to budge, and there's low energy, and there's schools where there's high energy and things are happening. And it's all predicated on culture. It's a cultural thing. And cultures, as you know, are very hard to transform and change. But if you've got a good one, keep nurturing it. And, the energy keeps going. I got lucky here. This school had a good culture when I got here. I thought, this is great. Colleagues have loved the place, and the kids tend to like the school. I felt we had a ways to go in terms of academic outcomes, and we did, and we've come a long way without losing the good stuff. The bit of scripture would say, "Don't gain the world and lose your soul." And with us, we were very careful to build the academic intensity and the aspirations and the outcomes of the kids, but still have a sense that there is community here and that people look after each other and we like each other and we get on well and there are no winners and losers. And so that's been a very careful, and as I said, the second time around, I was a lot more nuanced in terms of how you do it, but that's been a very careful movement. And so we get very, very good academic outcomes here, but we're not an ATAR factory. We're a school which still has a very strong community feel and a very strong community commitment from the students, from my colleagues, and from the families. So,
and how do you create that culture? I think what you touched on just then, an ATAR factory, I think that's a perception that particularly the media likes to put out there, that independent schools are all about producing high ATARs, but to actually achieve high academic excellence is a combination of many different areas of your personal development and your academic development. And I suppose there's a huge focus on well-being, student well-being now as well, which is fantastic. But how do you actually create a culture of that high expectation and academic excellence? You did mention before about the use of language, and I think that's a really powerful way to share the message or to share the vision. But how does it actually get instilled in your bones, as you mentioned before as well?
We again, inviting the people who it actually affects into the conversation. Every year now, our students survey their teachers about their classroom, about the teaching that goes on. Now, you might think, whoa, that's a bit scary. But what they do is they answer a series of questions which are then fed into some stats, and I get a report on every teacher in the school on a number of questions about relationships, about classroom techniques, about whether learning is happening, all that kind of thing. And I get all that information. Now, overwhelmingly, the students are very generous and positive about their teachers. So I can use that as a tool to feed back to the teachers. Hey, and I write to every one of them. I say, this is what your students are saying. They're saying you are a wonderfully warm teacher. They love coming to your class. They've marked you down a little bit on concluding the class and tying up what you covered, but that's something you might want to work on. But overwhelmingly, they love it. Now, what that does, the teacher then says, right, I'm going to work on that. And we have our teachers meet in teams of 3, and they go and look at each other's classes. And when they go there, they're not watching the teacher. They're watching the kids, because they're not watching the teaching, they're watching the learning. So they're watching the kid, their level of engagement with the kids. They're listening to the questions being asked. They're listening to how much the students are engaged. And then they sit down together and they will give each other feedback. Now, this feedback loop is a constant reminder to each of us, and I do it too. I survey our students and our teachers and our support staff about my performance. But this feedback loop constantly reminds us what we're aspiring to be, but also, hey, have a work on some of these things. But generally speaking, is very affirming and positive. Now, if you do that regularly, constantly foremost in your mind is improvement. I'm going to get better at this. I'm going to get better at this. And so that was a very powerful tool that we used, collecting, why on earth wouldn't you ask the students their opinion? They're the ones we're delivering for. So why wouldn't you ask them? You know what I mean? So
they're the ones experiencing it every day.
Yeah. So now picture this culturally. Young people are being asked to think about their classes and what works and what doesn't. Teachers are being asked to think about their classes, what works and what doesn't. And so everyone involved in that is considering improving. And the very act of asking those questions has an impact. And so that's been a big bit of traction. That's a big lever we've pulled. Second lever is, from me all the way down, we talk about academics as being important. Now, I think Australia does ourselves a massive disfavour when we don't value academic performance. The cultural cringe, give everyone an elephant stamp and don't talk about the smart kids, because, the other kids who are dumber will feel bad about themselves. Well, for a start, that's not how it works, but I'll talk about it in a minute. Yet those very kids can go out and play a game of footy against another school. If you kick 6 goals, we're cheering and saying you're a legend.
Yeah, yeah.
Why? Why is there a cultural cringe around academia, but not around sport or about getting on stage and being a great actor or whatever?
Even though Australia has produced some of the greatest inventors and scientists and
yes, but
many different people, but
most people can name the top 10 sports people, but name the top 10 thinkers in Australia and they'll struggle.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's because people believe a wrong paradigm, and that is, if you achieve, you're smart, and if you don't, you're dumb. And you can't tell kids they're dumb, so we just can't make those differentiations. It's not about that. It's not the smartest kids who succeed in school. It's the most activated and the most engaged and the most invested, the most motivated kids who succeed in school. VC is not wholly about ability. It's about organisation, dedication, engagement, and thinking about things, which gets measured. And young people can do that at various stages. And I'm a firm believer a young person who struggles, if taught the right way, and if they learn the right way, can get to the point where they're not struggling. A young person who is a high achiever can be an even higher achiever. And so that's been our philosophy here. Everyone can have access to success, whatever that means. And, we certainly, our young people do very, very well because they've bought into that culture of high aspiration. They've bought into it.
And a lot of it's about self-belief, isn't it?
Yes. And the adults in the room aren't frightened to say that this is important and you can do it. And so the young people are watching. If the adults in the room dumb things down, if the adults in the room don't value learning, and we're educators, and if we don't value learning, if we don't hold learning up as an aspiration, then the young people won't. And we are doing, people think you're doing a disservice to be valuing learning and talking about high achievement. You're doing a far worse disservice if you say, oh, little Johnny, you're not overly bright, so pat them on the head and give them tasks which don't really stretch them. They'll never be bright.
Yeah.
And I think that's a tragedy.
It is a tragedy.
And I don't think enough educational institutions, because they don't want to be seen as elitist, I don't think enough educational institutions actually get out there and make a stand and say, part of our culture is academic performance, because I think it's not pastoral. Well, I think the best form of pastoral care is a very good education.
Yeah.
They're not different. They're not separate. They're not anti to each other. If I've got a young person who gets a better pathway at the end of their schooling, no matter what it is, they have more choices than they would have had, whatever those choices are, then we've done our work.
Yeah. So, it's about giving people opportunities.
That's it. And if a young person scores a perfect score in Latin or a perfect score in designing wood, I don't give a damn. their aspirations are as important as each other. Academic excellence for us is across the whole curriculum. And we have got a pretty broad curriculum. I love seeing kids achieve in food studies. I love seeing kids achieve in revolutions. It makes no difference to me. The achievement is the key. And I just think the cultural cringe is doing us no favours.
No, absolutely not. And the encouragement of high achievers in Australia needs to be absolutely shifted, to have an incentive to achieve to the highest of your abilities and more. How important do you think that the family's attitudes and aspirations are to the success of their children's successes as well?
Hugely important. And this is where we get a free kick, and I'll freely admit it.
Yeah.
We do get families who are clearly invested in education. Clearly, there is a financial impost to come here, and so I'm not blind enough or disingenuous enough to say, oh, we're all completely open, because we're not. And so there is the school population we have already is invested in education, and that's where a lot of their energies lie. And there's no doubt, and all the studies show this, there's no doubt if a young person comes from a family where the parents value education, and there's lots of literature in the house, and there's reading and modelling and all that kind of stuff, there's a free kick, no question. Having said that, because we are the school we are, those that like to caricature us as being, elite, and only bright kids go there, it's actually not true. We have quite a number of kids with learning needs, a lot of kids with learning needs, in fact proportionally fairly high, because parents say, look, my son or daughter is struggling and will struggle at school. We know they do a good job. I'm going to do everything I can with my discretionary spending to get my son or daughter into that school, because I know that they will want the best for them and will achieve the best for them. So we aren't overrun with kids of high ability. We have got a number of students with special needs, and we work with those young people, and they're not sifted out of the system before year 12. If you start here, you're going to finish here, and that's our philosophy and our model. So kids with learning needs are going to go all the way, and at the end of it, they're going to do better than they thought they would, and they're going to have more options than they thought they'd have. And that's what our job as teachers is, to create options and give life pathways to kids wherever they are.
Yeah.
So the idea that these independent schools are only, tailoring for the elite depends on your definition of elite. We've got a lot of kids who battle here, and they're battlers. But part of our job is for them to get the best out of themselves.
And that's part of that culture of, saying that elite schools are bad, which is not the case.
This is the frustration of a number of my colleagues. We are caricatured in the media. We're caricatured as being, some 55-year-old guy commits a crime and they say former student of, some elite school in Melbourne. The guy's 55. You don't say, 55-year-old or former student of local high school. No. What on earth has that got to do with anything? And, the media is littered with examples of misbehaviour of young people in independent schools. You never hear a whiff of anything. I tell you what, if you were dispassionately looking, you'd never send your kid to an independent school. You send them to local state school, because they never misbehave. And so that sells papers. That's clickbait.
Yeah.
We know that. But it does a great... The only time I get annoyed at it, because you take it, it's clickbait. The only time I get annoyed with it is not when they demonise schools, because we're big people, we can take it. It's when they demonise the kids.
Yeah.
independent school kids are arrogant. Well, they're not.
Mm.
What about telling the story of our year 11s who 2 days a week go to the local primary schools and tutor refugee kids in English? No one writes about that. No one writes about our senior kids on soup kitchens who are trying to give back to the community. No one has mentioned that our school is the biggest school contributor to the Royal Children's Hospital for the last 20 years. No one mentions that because that's not clear. You don't want to read that. You want to read if one kid gets caught smoking the wrong thing at a railway station somewhere. Oh, beautiful. Another independent school kid who's a nightmare. Well,
I want to hear some more good news stories from your school students.
It's fascinating. And I think more broadly, young people do get demonized a bit. I mean, Socrates said, young people are bad for old people's digestion. You know what I mean? I mean, it goes all the way back. Goes all the way back. That young people have always been demonized by older people, which is unforgivable because older people forget what they were like when they were young. Unforgivable. I mean, I've got a very good memory, and I know what a nightmare I was when I was a teenager. And so, we can't demonize young people too much. Yet, young people now actually have got a far more heightened social conscience than I ever had or my friends ever had at the same age. Far greater social conscience, far more invested in outreach than we ever were. So, I think they get a bad rap. Way off, I reckon.
Yeah, I think so too. And every generation is going to be slightly different and pushing more boundaries and asking more questions, which I think a lot of young people now are a lot more curious and willing to ask questions, or more courageous to ask questions and be curious. And I think if we push that down, it's a tragedy.
And a little bit more accepting a difference too than we ever were.
Yeah.
Young people have a lot of great qualities. I don't know, as I say, even our villains here, deep down, they're good kids. They're just villains, and people have short memories. Appalling behaviour. Well, cast your mind back 30 years for a moment, and you're probably doing exactly the same, if not worse. But we only remember, our highlights. We don't remember the times when we were, perhaps not our better selves.
At the end of the day, they're just seeking guidance, and they need healthy adults around them to give them that guidance and to demonstrate that. So I just wanted to touch a bit more on family engagement.
Yes.
And how you actually engage the parents in the learning of their children, apart from school reports and, the normal interviews with teachers and those sorts of things. How else do you really engage your families in their learning and in the community?
We have a number of clubs, for want of a better term, like Yarra Music. So all the musos, and there's quite a number of them, who are involved in music in the school. We have this Yarra Music where all the parents work in Yarra Music to build up like a social group in music. They fundraise for the music program. They help organise concerts. They're right in there, absolutely invested. Same with Yarra Snow Sports or Yarra Equestrian or PNF so we do have this. It's really based around this interest investment in the school. It's a bit of a one-line catch cry, but people often ask, how come Yarra's so successful? You're open entry, and the kids do so well. I said, well, it's a very powerful combination. We've got supportive parents, invested teachers, and aspirational kids. You put those three things together, and you can do anything. And what I mean by supportive parents, they really do back us. Everyone talks about the toxic parent. Well, yes, you can get them. but they are very much in the very, very small minority. The vast majority of parents, particularly if you can demonstrate why you do things and the outcomes are good, they will back you all the way. So our parents are very supportive of us. And the fact that they're very supportive means that we are more powerful in what we're doing. So it's those private groups. We do survey the parents about their perceptions of the school, and we get the data back, good and bad, and we use that to help inform what we will work on and what we improve on and what we need to do. So we do get fairly high levels of investments. We are not a parent-run school, so there's not a role there for managing the school or being involved in that way. We're very much a traditional grammar school in that sense. But we do get parents back us and support us in these various other ways.
And how do they support their children at home? Is there a framework or a structure that you have in place to help them understand how their children are progressing and how they can support at home?
We have a regime of progressive reporting. So what happens is every student has an online presence, goes through our portal, and the teacher, every piece of assessed work the teacher does, the teacher will go onto the portal, enter the results, and make some comments and press return. Now, the student has access to that, and the parent has access to that. So the parent looks at the result. Hey, fantastic, did well. Writes back to the teacher. Oh, thanks for that. Great news. I'll work on that. Now, conversely, if a bit of assessment is a bit flat, then the teacher will indicate that and the parent will pick that up. So there's no surprises at the end of the semester. You can't be surprised because consistently throughout the course of the semester, all the teachers have been feeding into this online assessment. So the parents are engaged constantly. You can't make them engaged, but certainly we do our data analysis and we know that we've had lots of hits. The parent usage of our portal is very high. And so there's constant conversations going on back and forth between the parents and the teachers. At the end of the semester, the students get a transcript of results like a university transcript. They'll get the subject, they'll get the percentage score, and they'll get everything from a high distinction through to a pass and non-pass. You try not to say far too often. But there's clarity. There's great clarity in the feedback we give the student and the parents. Now, this continuous reporting allows the student to improve at any time during the year. You're not finishing the year going, oh, little Johnny was not good at reading. Wonderful. The year's finished and I find out little Johnny's not good at reading. So you find that out along the way and you can actually do something about it and you can actually engage more.
Yeah.
That's how we do it.
That closing the loop on the communication in terms of...
Yeah, there's constant communication.
Yeah. And how did you get buy-in with your staff to do that?
Well, it's interesting. There is buy-in for two reasons. There's altruism and there's self-interest. Are you ready for that?
Mm-hmm.
Altruism is that it's clearly a better way to go. That, a lot of our staff members are parents. And you ask the question, would you like to know, ongoing throughout the course of the year, how your daughter or son's doing? Yep, absolutely. So they know it's a better system.
Yeah.
Self-interest. We're coming up to the end of the term now, aren't we? The end of semester. They don't write reports.
They don't have to.
The system generates the transcript, the results, by going back over all the results that have entered during the course of the year, and then you press return and you get the report sent home online. And
so the work's already done.
It's done. So you're not back ending all the work. The dreaded report writing time isn't dreaded anymore. So altruism and self-interest, you can't go wrong.
And there's no dreaded conversations with parents either, because you're preventing those from happening by constant communication.
No scary surprises at the end of the year. which we all, it's not fair on anyone. And not, as a young teacher, I can remember clearly. I think myself, in a year, I'm writing a flat report. I think, now, have I really communicated this to the parent over? I don't think I have. So I think this is a far fairer and far better system.
Much better, yeah. That warms my heart to hear that. I wish that was happening in every school.
But it is, schools are morphing this way. They're starting to head this way. And I think use the technology. It's a great thing. We talk about the lockdown, right? I undertook during the lockdown to communicate with parents once a week. So I thought, right, I'll write them an email. And I thought to myself, why would I do that? Why write them an email? So what I did was I did this. I communicated with them. I kept them in touch with the school online with a blog. And nothing I've ever done in schools has been better received. Nothing than that. Because the parents because the young people aren't going to school, the parents are feeling disconnected. They would click on the link and I'd be saying, hi, everyone. It's week 3. This is what's happening at school. This is, we would run virtual house cross countries and things where the families could log on and the whole family could get involved and go running around the neighborhood and check in and put their Ks in and all that kind of stuff. And we were constantly engaging with the families through the lockdown. And that was very reassuring for them. So use the technology. If you got the technology, use it. If you can do progressive reporting through the year, do it. Why not?
Yeah, I watched. Sorry.
If it's better and you can do it, do it.
Yeah, I watched your vlog and I really enjoyed just the fact that you give an update about what you've been doing and you're very open and honest. And I did learn that you've just been in the US to visit the Harvard School of Education. And so I guess my final question, which is a big one to you, is what is the feel that you get from speaking with other leaders over in the US from all around the world of where education is heading? And do you feel that you're on the right track with your leadership? Clearly, you're sharing today in conversation about your leadership will inspire a lot of people, and it's certainly inspired me. But what's the feeling that you get in terms of where education actually is moving with new technology and all of the different changes that are happening in our world at the moment?
There are a number of parts. First part is I remember being at Harvard, and Harvard's a prestigious university, and I was there with principals from all over the world. And I was there with some of my colleagues from here in Victoria. And and I don't want to sound arrogant here, I don't, but this is just fact. We very quickly worked out that Australian schools are in pretty good shape. Generally speaking, they're in pretty good shape. I was talking to one principal from Texas, and I said, oh, yeah, teacher shortage, not a lot of people going into teaching, and that can be a problem. He said, really? He said, there's such a teacher shortage in Texas now that we're employing high school graduates as teachers.
Really? Whoa.
And wow. So the challenges that we face here, yeah, we do have challenges here, but we are in relatively good shape. The second thing is the teaching profession. There are a lot of good people out there who make outstanding teachers. And we've been banging on about this for years. Somehow we've got to make the profession far more attractive to young people. I've got 2 sons. Alistair became a lawyer, and he's a lawyer. The second one is on his way he wants to be an academic. So he's on his way to do his PhD and so forth. And I think to myself, both these young guys have made absolute spot-on teachers. They'd be brilliant at it. But they've gone and chosen different pathways because teaching just didn't seem to be something that was high on their agenda or on their radar. We've got to make it. It's the mother and father of all professions. For goodness sake, every surgeon in the country was taught by a teacher. Every
That's
lawyer,
right.
every governor general, everyone had their foundations in their family and their school. That's where their foundations were. That's what led them on their life pathway. And the fact that the teachers aren't revered in this country like they are in, say, Japan, the senseis in Japan or the professores in Italy, it's beyond belief that this has happened. And look, I think possibly the profession hasn't done itself many favors over the years because it became industrial and it became transactional and it became, all about me rather than all about the kids. And I think that led us down a path where the profession was devalued. And now we go, woe is me, we're devalued. Well, we've got we who are in the profession have got a role to play here to bolster our stocks in the community. And actually, ironically, I think during COVID we did, because a lot of parents for the very first time were sitting off screen watching classes going, wow, this is fantastic. I had no idea teachers are this good.
Yeah.
So we should have and we should ride that wave of awareness among the community that the profession is a wonderful thing. I've loved being in education. I've never, first off, they paid me to teach history. They actually paid me to do something I love doing anyway, history. And then leadership, they paid me to actually do, to feel that I could make changes and make a difference with young people. They paid me to do it. Hey, what a great job. So it is a great job. Somewhere along the line, we've got to stop talking it down and talk it up and get young people into the profession and nurture them and make them feel as if they're doing something wonderful. And all of a sudden, wonderful teachers breed wonderful schools.
Yeah.
Simple
And
as that.
hopefully this interview today is one of those catalysts for, encouraging people to go into the profession, because with leaders such as yourself talking about how wonderful it is and how amazing it is actually to transform young lives, then hopefully that will shift the narrative, which is what we're attempting to do with this podcast anyway.
Well, Rachel, look, I think, I'm a big rap for teaching. Not only what you do, but also who you become. This has allowed me to develop, my own personal development. Has allowed me to grow as to who I am. But importantly, when I'm sitting back and in retirement or going into my dotage, I will remember the young people, and the ones that you feel you're successful with, and the ones that you tried but maybe didn't get there, but at least you tried, So that's the things you remember, and to me, it's a life well spent. So people who are thinking about, what is life all about? Well, life is about what you can bring to others, and what a profession this is. It's all about what you can bring to others. So I encourage young people, go for it. You never look back. It's a great job.
Well, that's fantastic. And I've really thoroughly enjoyed listening and learning from you today. And I just want to thank you for your time, because I know you're a very busy person. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I'm really excited to share this with others, and hopefully other people learn from your leadership.
Well, look, I just love the interest. Thanks for the interest. I mean, it's a great mission we have, and it's so it's warming to know that other people are interested in backing us. So thank you.
You're welcome. Well, what another inspiring interview in our Leadership in Education series of our Creating Connections podcast. If you enjoyed this interview and would like to learn more from other leaders in education, please click on the subscribe button to receive further podcasts on your feed. If you'd like to be a guest on our podcast, click on the link below to book a meeting with me to learn more about you and your leadership in education. Or if you're listening to this podcast, send an email to rachel@practicallylearning.com.au to express your interest in being on the podcast. If you are a school leader or teacher with aspirations for leadership, but you're challenged with self-doubt, overwhelm, and whether you have what it takes to take that next step, our Connect with Your Mind Mastery Coaching Program can support you to work on your own self-mastery to become the leader you aspire to be. For further information about our coaching and professional learning programs, please visit our website at practicallylearning.com.au or click on one of the links below and visit our podcast for our future series of interviews to support you as the adults who are guiding children on their learning journey. I do hope you enjoy the rest of our episodes on our Creating Connections podcast, and I hope to meet you soon.